Robi began his musical career when he was a child and took up the piano at age 7.
Yes.
That's excellent. Immigrated to Canada in 1998 and is now a permanent resident. And he has a lovely family, a new little one, newish, just over a year.
14 months.
14 months. Yes. And shortly after coming to Canada, Robi caught the ear of jazz great Oscar Peterson, quickly became his protege. To this day, Robi remains a part of the Oscar Peterson legacy, very much a part of the family. And you just do so much. The traditions, the Romani traditions, European folk, classical music, playing with Jeff Tane Watts, Juno. Congratulations on the Juno.
Thanks.
Robi Botos, please.
Thanks.
So we started. So what we're going to do today, we're going to have a kind of a getting to know you session with Robi. There's a couple things that you're going to learn here. You're going to learn how to conduct and to be an interview subject. I've talked to Robi quite a few times over my career, and it's always a pleasure to just speak with you and have a conversation about what's happening in your life. So I haven't spoken to you since the Juno, so congratulations, that was last year.
Thank you.
Well done. I haven't spoken to you since the film score,
Yes.
which is incredible. We'll talk about that, about keeping it fresh. And I want to start with your just a background on how you came, because you're a drummer. You started out as a drummer.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Well, what happened, I born into a very, very musical family. And my dad is a musician. He plays drums and he sings. And my mom's family, there's a lot of musicians there. So basically, as far as we can go back, everybody played music pretty much. And 2 brothers are musicians, drums and bass. So as a little kid, drums were around me at a very early age, and all I wanted to do is just play drums. And then my dad had this vision of 3 kids playing together. And so we had
Like the Romani Jackson Five. Right.
So we would have a couple of sets of drums at home, 2 pianos. They were both horrible. So all kinds of instruments, synthesizers, whatever we had. And I started playing piano for the group so that we can make music together. And I also fell in love with piano because of the melodies, and you can really put your emotions into it as far as melody and harmony goes. So I was really into piano right away.
Did you think of it as something, I mean, there's one thing being into something, but there's got to be at a certain point you think to yourself, this is something that I want to devote more than just, casual or fun time to?
Yeah, I think partly because I grew up in an era where, we're talking 80s, where, there wasn't a lot of options for video games yet, and not so much, internet or anything like that. So music was a huge part. And I think it was obvious from a very early age that I spent way more time at the piano than most kids. So. And not really practicing, because I'm not a good practicer at all, but I love playing. So it was the same back then, that when I had to learn something what was written, like I went to a very basic music school, but I never really had jazz education.
Okay.
I learned by ear, and but my dad put me into music school, and that didn't last for long because I would just improvise all the time.
What was that like at your music school? What was a typical music school?
Well, it was like actually as basic as it was. Having basic piano education in Europe was huge at that time, because they would ask, my teacher would ask that I go through all the scales, all the arpeggios, and that's how we would start out a lesson. So you couldn't really BS too much. You had to kind of get your stuff together. And but the drag was that when she would give me a classical piece, I would bring it back and change it.
Ah, so you're always with the jazz then?
Yeah, she told me to. You're gonna regret this so much. And I wish that you listened to her, because I love classical music, and I listen to probably more classical than anything else these days. And I mean, I listen to all kinds of things, not too much jazz, but.
Is that right? Why is that?
Well, there's a few reasons. I think that the one reason is that I would play jazz and all these influences would come out. So I think I love getting sources from
Other
different places.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But also, there are some of the newer. I don't mean to sound like a dinosaur, but there's a lot of the older stuff I grew up on. I can really relate to that, and there's not too much of the newer music I can really relate to. But it doesn't really just mean jazz. Mm-hmm. I think there's a fewer picks I have these days.
What were you listening to growing up?
Oh, well, I was obviously Oscar Peterson was a huge.
Even before that, like how early in your life did you discover Oscar?
One of the first, we had some vinyls at home, and it's the big thing.
This is where we've got a couple of them over there. If anyone needs a visual reference, this is the vinyl.
So we would have Horace Silver live at the Village Vanguard, and Oscar Peterson Trio +1 with Clark Terry. It was life-changing. That's actually, when I heard that record, I was like, there's a certain amount of swing in there. This is what I'm gonna do. I need to, I was just hooked when I heard Oscar. So that was one of the first things. And Herbie Hancock. It's funny because this was like VHS times. So there's a lot of music instructional VHS came out, and I was a little kid, so I would have, and all these European broadcasts on VHS, which people would just randomly record from while it's on TV.
Yeah.
So these things would go around, and if somebody has it, then we go over, can you make a copy? And it was a lot of, it's kind of like streaming, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's like analog streaming, I guess.
Right,
So
I would have this mixed VHS tape with Keith Jarrett Trio on it from French broadcast, and I would have Metheny, Pat Metheny with Billy Higgins and Charlie Hayden. Those were some of the first things I heard. But I had these vinyls as well. So I was really lucky because I would be introduced to Bud Powell and Oscar Peterson and Horace Silver, but I would also get all the Metheny stuff and Herbie Hancock. And I think it has to do with the popular people at the time. I think it has to do with the people who had good exposure and good promotion, and they were part of the big jazz festival. So automatically you're gonna see the people who are well known. Mm-hmm. So, but it was an interesting time because Hungary was communist.
Yeah.
So jazz wasn't really the thing you should be listening to, or you can get easy access to. But people would go. My dad would go on cruise ships and work as a drummer. And then he would stop by when they were in New York, go out and shop or something, and these modern drummer magazines show up, and like a jazz magazine, and we were like, oh my God, this is some American stuff.
Yeah.
So we had a huge hunger for jazz too. So these were some of my influences. I remember going to the park, and while everyone else is, I was a part of the soccer and all that stuff too, but somebody would have Oscar Peterson on a Walkman. In Hungary.
What kind of kids did you hang out with? Like
all musicians' kids.
That's incredible.
Musicians' kids who are hungry for freedom and jazz music,
Right.
And it would be like some kid has this new Oscar Peterson tape cassette, and we were all like in a lineup to give me 2 seconds, and then we're just listening, and the other kid just grabs it. No, I want to listen. So we're fighting over Oscar Peterson.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And then to know where you have come and as far as Oscar Peterson and his legacy since then. We're going to get to that. But there's something really interesting that you talked about, it, because in this day and age, we're talking about the business of music and right now, as well as your story. But there's something to be said about having to be in a situation where you have to seek out and you're hungry for the music that inspires you and the things that inspire you, that you have to actually dig it out. Mm-hmm. And I talk about this with my 16-year-old all the time when I'm being a mom, going, back in my day, I had to make mixtapes myself, and now she's on YouTube all day, and it's easy for her to find things. And I think that ease perhaps does something to the hunger. Mm-hmm. You know, like you're not as, it's coming too easily to you.
Yeah. Well, I keep thinking while I was listening to some of the presentation, I just keep thinking about those times where like there's no internet.
There's nothing.
What do artists do with no internet connection? You know, like some of the heaviest, like the best musicians I hear, they're from countries where they don't really have that together yet. So how are they gonna, you know?
Well, that's true.
It's a tricky thing, but I think it definitely has to do with wanting to learn more, I guess, when it's not in front of you all the time. I remember going over to a famous Hungarian piano player's house because he's got all that collection you have there, and if you bring a tape, he'll make you some copies. So there was like a line of young jazz musicians like, I want to get some Herbie Hancock, and so it's like a store, you know.
Right.
You go and it was just amazing, and going home and like knowing that I can listen to this. It's an interesting thing how much hunger you have.
For sure. For that. His last name was Spotify. Was that it? And now what has he created? It is. I think that hunger is so important, and I wonder about moving into your adult life and making the move, and music coming along with you and deciding, like cracking it here in Canada at the best of times when you've grown up in the system. You don't have to worry about those things like, you know, I have to immigrate, I have to get my papers, I have to do this and that. But at the same time, you still have to keep your creative soul engaged.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because it also musically will change you. Like as you mentioned, I have kids. I have 3 living at home, and I have a stepdaughter who is not living with us, but 4 kids altogether. So if you put that on top of it, plus I had to sell my piano to come to Canada. So for like 12 years, the most important years pretty much, I didn't have an instrument to practice on. So not only it changes with all these sacrifices you have to do to get a better future for your family and for yourself, but also musically you learn how to, you know, I spent all my childhood, you know, trying to learn what Oscar Peterson played, what Bill Evans played, and get it close and learn all these voicings and, you know, what they did, and then watch video, how they played the piano and how they played the drums and all that stuff. And then you kind of learn, okay, well, you know, as you have family and bills coming in from left and right, and you play simple little things, and you go do sessions with people, and you get involved with other styles. But it's all great because I did grow up listening to not only jazz, but because I had a very musical family, we listened to a lot of other things. So I think it's a huge part of me doing a lot of things today is that I got access to a lot of
things. But how do you, like, I want to talk about those first gigs. You come to this country, and then you have to get your name out. Nobody knows who you are. No one. How does that all start to happen for you?
Yeah, I think it was a smart thing. You know, I mean, I don't know really. I can only, at that stage, you only credit God for it, because you come to a new place with no English, with kids, no guarantees. We lived in a shelter where the government puts you, and it's like you're just hoping for the best. So, but I think it was a smart thing that I was out as much as it's not comfortable to leave your family. You know, like you stay here. You don't speak English, but it's all gonna be good. I'll be at the jazz club. I had to get out, and my social worker at the time said that there's this club. I was in Burlington for the first 3 months, Burlington, Ontario, and a friend of mine who also immigrated, we had a social worker friend who said that, oh, so your friend plays jazz. Well, I know this place in Hamilton called the Sun-Dried Tomatoes, and there's jazz there. You guys want to go? Maybe he can hook up with people. So we went there, and David Braid was playing there with Henry Strong, this bass player who lives in Hamilton, I think. So they're playing a duo thing. I'm sitting there, and then Dave comes up, and we have the translator going, and first thing he says, "Would you like to play?" And I said, "Sure, I'll play." And I played, I don't know, maybe softly as in the morning sunrise, I think. I played a standard, and then Dave was basically just getting my number. I said, "Well, I don't have a number, but I live at this place called Town and County in Burlington," and he would take down the address, and then the phone rings. I believe it was the next day at my motel. And it's like, we were looking at the phone. And, the only English I had at the time is all the lyrics you would pick up from like George Michael. So it wasn't good, but he said jam session. So I knew he's probably taking me to a jam session. And it's like, "I'm gonna come at 6 p.m. and I'm like, 6? Yeah, I think that's 6. So I know. So he shows up at my motel and took me to the Reps from Burlington. He drove me, put me on stage, and he told people that I just got here, and people should watch out, and ask Tom at the Rex to give me a gig. It was like, David Braid was like an angel.
Yeah.
He's probably tired of hearing this because I always mention, but it was a hugely important part. He introduced me to Gene Blackley, who had jam sessions at his old place in Toronto, and I would see people like Mike Murley and Mike Stewart and Mike McLennan, and a lot of great musicians just come out. So it was very, very easy because of that one step to meet a lot of musicians.
You have the angel, and I think that we all have those opportunities to have those angels in our lives, or little things that happen. But there is something to be said about having the courage to just step into it and just do it.
For sure.
Because you could have the angels come by your gate, and you could say, "You know what, I'm just going to stay home."
Exactly. And I know people like that, who's still sitting at home because of that. It's a lot of sacrifice, no question, because you're, at some point you kind of feel like you're getting old for, going out to jam sessions every day. But there was if you come in my case, I came to a new country, so no one's gonna know you. So it's a task, because when you grow up in Hungary, there are still chances that I went to school with so-and-so, and they know who I am, they know that I play music. There's more things can come out of that, but when we came here, it was obvious that if I don't go out there, and I used to go not only to jazz clubs, but I used to go to a place, Revival, I believe it is, in college, where all these R&B and funk jam sessions would happen. So I, tried to go out and meet musicians. I met people like Rich Brown. Yeah. And I told him one day we'll play together.
And now look at you. It was through my my hairdresser.
Oh wow.
My hairdresser, many years ago, I just started out as a journalist, and I was at the CBC, and I was doing a show on the arts. And my hairdresser, who was just such a flamboyant man, and he was doing my hair, flipping it, and he said, "What are you doing about jazz on your show?" And I said, "Oh, I play some fun." And he goes, "You don't know Robbie, do you? Because if you knew Robbie, that's who you would talk about." And I was like, "No, I don't know Robbie." And he was a guy that was from the R&B kind of world. He was into funk and R&B, but he used
to listen to Wayne Shorter and Herbie Hancock, the duo record, while he was cutting my hair. So I was like, Why are you listening to this music?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we were connected from the beginning through our hair.
This is when I had hair. I had more hair.
You know, I was looking at I don't know if you've seen this, it's been floating around the internet lately. It's a saxophonist, Steve Lacy from 1960. He was playing with Thelonious Monk, and Monk said, have you guys seen this? He's like, I have some notes for you, Monk said to Steve. You gotta take these notes if you're gonna play with me. Take them down right now. So I read these, I have read them about 1,000 times over the last week or so, because every little thing is like a grain of, like just a granule of something incredible. And I wanted to throw a couple of at you to see, to just gauge what you're feeling about.
I know he's got one when he says, when you think you swing, swing harder.
That's it right here. When you think you're swinging, swing more. Yeah. Just keep swinging. So you've seen them, so you know. They're incredible, right?
Yeah.
I like this. A note can be as small as a pin or as big as the world. It depends on your imagination, which is something that stuck with me, that goes beyond just music to me. And I wonder about finding that big world, because at a certain point you have all these influences and you have to find
your own voice. That's a very good point. And well, I don't want to say that happened to me. That kind of did when I was, it was like a warning to me when I first had the honor of playing with Dave Young, great bass player who played with Oscar Peterson for about 35 years.
Yeah. Unbelievable new album too.
Oh yeah. And it's up for a Juno.
It is up for a Juno, yeah.
So I played with Dave Young, and this was crazy for me because we played at a hotel where he used to have jazz at this hotel called it was right at the Front and University Crown Plaza.
Yeah.
It's changed, I think.
I think it's changed. It's something else.
So I was playing there, and I asked Dave if he wants to play because I saw him at the Rex. I'm like, I'm gonna ask this guy, maybe he'll take the gig.
See, this is the thing. Who does this though? You do.
He was so nice to me. I said, Dave, would you play? He's like, yeah, sure, I'll play. And then so we're playing the gig, and I think Terry Clark was on drums, who also played with Oscar. And I used to listen to some Oscar's work with these two, so I'm like freaking out. And automatically when they play, you know, because when you listen to an album so much, there's certain things you're gonna go for. And I was 19 or 20, so I was very much a lot of times I was in copy mode, you know, like if I play, I think it's natural from a lot of young musicians that you know, you play a Herbie Hancock tune and then you kind of have that one record in your mindset and that's how you're gonna play that. And it's great to copy styles. I mean, that's the only way to learn. But then when we played in the break, he's like, hey Robbie, you're sounding good. I want to hear some of you though. And then he just went off, like, you know, had a drink or something. I want to hear some Robbie in the next set. And it was like a you know, call that, well, it's all cool until you play with the people who your heroes played with. Then it sounds stupid.
Yeah.
Because if you love someone and you've worked with him for so many years and he passes away and there's this kid trying to imitate one of your best friends and one of the best musicians on the planet, it's okay, but you want to give them that advice too, is that, you know, you gotta, and that's when I started to dig into my culture more. Because I was in Canada, you can, you know, it's more free here to be who you are. I think that Canada gave me that opportunity that I don't have to be ashamed of who I am.
Right.
So I started digging into my own culture and just all kinds of music from all around the world, and some music by Romani, by people that also known as gypsies, although we don't prefer that term. It became very stereotypical over the years. But I started to let that out, and I think that was one of the turning points that, you know, I was able to at least track where my own voice would be. And I think it's working out better.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And the one thing I want
Yes.
is when I play, that comes out. Because
Yes.
I think it's so important that to me that's most important, that I play and my experience and my background and my heart comes out more than. There's a lot of, maybe because of YouTube and all the educational programs out there, a lot of people are able to now learn things so much faster.
Right.
And transcriptions, you can listen to Oscar Peterson while you're looking at all the notes he played and Bill Evans, same kind of thing, like technology. So that's why you see like some little kids at a level where it's like, what? Like he grew up on YouTube,
Yeah.
He does some of the, back in the day, see?
Yeah. We're back in the day.
The pencil and the cassette tape and trying to slow down the. I used to. The funny thing, we used to slow down Keith Jarrett in Budapest, Hungary with this. You know where it's going. With this. I don't know how, but there's some screwdriver you needed to make the tape thing go slower, but the pitch would go down too.
Right.
So, you can imagine my mom listening to, I'm gonna demonstrate that. Just gonna play a couple notes. It would sound, whatever he would play up here would sound like. How he moves. So
It would sound like Sasquatch playing some notes. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people these days, it's like you can slow down things and the key never changes and all that stuff.
Keep the pitch.
Right.
The thing is, and that's the thing about the music has to become your story, right? Like you have to somehow get
Right.
your story
Right.
into the music, because technical proficiency is what you're saying is
Right.
one thing.
Right, and there's like so many, like I also think that music, especially in the jazz area, this is my honest opinion, that it is such a high level, the technical level, is that I think when we touched on what made me fall in love with jazz was the personalities, the
Right.
stories.
Oh, me too.
Because you don't have to
100%.
think when you hear Oscar Peterson who's playing. You don't need to, when you hear Keith Jarrett, for me it takes 2-3 notes.
Yeah,
it's
and
like-
you know.
So that's what I'm after. These days I almost, like I start playing and, like all musicians, sometimes your hands just kind of go, I know some of you are musicians here, so sometimes it's easy to just do the patterns. But I'd rather play 2 notes,
Yeah.
but mean something.
Yes. Well, Monk talked about that too,
Mhm.
about just leaving it alone.
He's the one of the most perfect examples for, not even playing, and
Yeah.
you're just there kind of.
Waiting,
Yeah.
the anticipation
So
of
great.
what might come. Yeah, is the most important thing. We are talking a little bit about business and about that. Was there ever a time in this journey of yours, which is a remarkable journey, and I hope someone does the movie.
In a world.
In a world.
Hey, Russ Porter could do that.
Yeah, or you could ask Keith Jarrett to do it. You could play and then just do something while he's doing. But I wonder about a time where it was just like, you know what? This is going to be an unattainable dream at this point, to make this music my career and being able to take care of the things that was there ever a point in which you were like, you know what? I don't think I could do this. I might have to be a bus driver.
You want me to be honest?
No, I don't. I want you to lie.
That happens every day.
It happens every day.
That happens every day because the way the business changed. I feel like, it's such a roller coaster all the time that like I had the most amazing couple of years within Canada, having the Juno and the Soken Award and playing with a lot of the best musicians. But I think you're touching on a financial, more of a financial.
It is that.
Because
the
when we talk
realities
of business,
yeah.
that's the key word. So I think every artist today, no matter what level you're on, you can get to that very easily, where you think, oh, how am I gonna, like, just, you know, if this is all you do for the living. In my case, I mean, music is what I do, but it had to work out in a way where I teach.
Yep.
I teach at Hamburg College, which is amazing, and I'm very...
Hamburg! Represent, yes, big Hamburg.
And I'm not gonna lie, most musicians I know, I mean, we could talk about any legends of mine. These days, they most of them teach, or they write for a picture, or they do, you know, jingles, or it's like there's a lot of things you have to do. And I did a lot of, you know, it's less today, but did a lot of recording sessions for all kinds of styles of music. You know, so the only way I'm able to sustain my own career is by doing a lot of different things.
Yeah.
If it's up to playing jazz, it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my dream was, of course, that I'll just go out and play, like Keith Jarrett, go out and play a standard and gets a lot of money for it. You know, it doesn't. You know, not for my generation. It doesn't really work. There are some cases where, you know, but I think you know, we've been told earlier that stories are important in your career. There's just a lot of support. I mean, you still need a record label, but you can do so much on your own. But my generation, by the time we figure out the old school way of doing things, it's changed.
The new is already changed, yeah.
And now you're trying to, you know, oh, I gotta get my CD to that guy, and then, well, wait, he doesn't have a CD player, because there are no CD players anymore. Or, you know, like new laptops, new cars don't have CDs. So, but we're making CDs, and we spend 20 grand to make a CD. But you still need a CD, because if you don't have a CD, you can't get into, you know, as we've been told earlier, festivals need a new product.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a very tricky thing, and I could not do it if it was just one thing. Unless, you know, some artists come from very wealthy background, and this is not to, you know, of course, badmouth anyone. But I do see that the people who have to they have no worries about, you know, supporting a family from music, then it's easier to focus on. Or there's also single musicians who just, you know, their parents pay for the school and they off to New York, and all they do is just jam and wait for the opportunity. I can't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so it's a tricky thing, and I did that with the family. I would go and like just keep going. I'm not playing tonight. Okay, I'll be out jamming. I have to go and meet more. And still, I kind of have, you know, we all have to do it. But it's transitioning now to online presence, which is also a tricky thing, because I know we're going into a lot of different things.
I like this. It's great.
But I think, you know, I'm just trying to share what's on my mind, and hopefully you can take something out of it. But I also see that the people who take things in their own hands, and artists who do Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, all the social media, and they have a huge follow. We might not even know who they are, but there is an online following. But a lot of those people would be just spending so much money. I mean, money, I said money, I don't know what, time and money to buy followers and to you know, so it's a tricky thing, because I refuse to buy followers. I tried it once, and you know how you can spend a little money on gaining followers. I'm gonna admit I'm never gonna do it again, because I just saw these random people who I know don't even exist, and they hate jazz if they do, if they do exist. So I refuse to do that. But it's such a different game, that I'm not one of the guys who, you know, I do go online and go live sometimes doing a sound check. I'm excited to play with so and so, or please come out to the performance, so there's a new gig. but I'm not the guy who, you know, hey guys, I'm eating an apple and I thought it's important.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a picture. Yeah.
And there's a lot of that, and it seems to work for people.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But you know, it's just the game changed so much that if I didn't build up all these relationships in different styles, and if I didn't have a teaching, then you know there's more pressure on you trying to make a living, taking more gigs, and thankfully I can say more no. More, we talked about that earlier.
Yeah,
No.
saying being able to say no.
Hello?
Yeah.
No.
No. Robbie, can you?
No.
No.
No,
That's
but
very important.
it's interesting because I used to just, you know, you say yes to anything. And then you feel like you burnt out because this is not, I didn't start, you know, playing music to you know, play with people I don't want to play with. You know, you wanted to play music because you love it. And this is where business comes in, because if it's music business, and this is where you make a living, then you have to consider, you know, doing not only one thing but other things too.
Yeah.
I had a chance to talk to Quincy Jones. I actually had a chance to meet him a few times, but that's one of the first things he said, that these days you don't want to just stick to one thing.
You can.
And if you look at his career,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same guy who produced Frank Sinatra, and then he produced Thriller.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
Yeah.
TV scores and all kinds
Everything.
of everything. And that's the thing, I think, as artists, finding that thing, I consider what you do as an art, say piano, jazz piano, is your love. And so finding the things that can feed you that are love adjacent, that are related
Yes.
to your love.
Although I did grow up with a lot of jazz, and that was the reason I think why most of us stick to jazz is because I can go on stage and play in the moment. Because the one thing I wouldn't want to do, and I know some of my friends who play with the biggest pop stars in the world right now, and they're not playing. They're on stage dancing around and everything is going from a track. I'd like to make the money they make.
Yeah,
you know.
sure.
But at the same time, the reason why we love this music is because it's in the moment, and you go on a journey as a performer, but as an audience too. I always love these songs when they don't know how they're gonna end it, and they kind of searching for ways. And oh, he just did that. It's like to me that's like entertainment, you know. So I always loved that, and I think that's just a very important part. But I did listen to Stevie Wonder nonstop as a kid. I listened to so much music, all kinds of George Benson, George Duke, Al Jarreau, big time. And so I'm lucky that when I would get called to do something like that, I still love it. You know, there's some people who just, you know, just want to play 60s jazz and that only, and that's gonna be rough.
Yeah.
To try to, you know, sustain that. But so I gotta do a lot of things, but thankfully I've been doing, like I was always into, you know, producing and movie scores. I was always listening to Ennio Morricone as a kid.
Of course.
There's this one movie called Once Upon a Time in America with De Niro and James Woods, and I remember listening to the soundtrack of that, and I was like, I want to do this. I want to write for, you know. So, you know, all these things are in the works, but somehow jazz and out playing will put you more forward in that area, because you can't go out to a club and jam on movie scores.
No.
Or even classical music, which is very unfortunate. You can't find places where you go and jam with people. You have to have this other system. You know, it would be nice if you can go to a classical jam and not even improvising, but just let's play that piece.
Yeah.
You
for
want to
sure.
be on cello? Yeah,
Yeah.
come on out. You
Yeah.
know, like I think that would have.
I think that's a great opportunity right there.
I think they used
Cool.
to do that.
Did they?
Yeah, of course.
Bach and those guys were great.
Well, yes, but I'm saying in this contemporary spot that we're in now, I don't
Yeah.
see.
So
or
so
hear
jazz will, it's gonna be the ongoing thing for people. Like, there's some members of the Stones,
Mhm.
Daryl Jones and Tim Reese,
Yeah.
who are, they're jazz musicians, and they're out in the clubs jamming.
Right.
And I mean, there are a lot of examples when pop artists would hire jazz musicians because the pop artists will hang at the jazz club too. So it's a good place to network, but it's also easy to get into that box where people, oh, he's a jazz guy.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. What you don't want to do is get labeled as the guy who does, like, as much as I admire some of my heroes like Oscar Peterson, but sometimes people come up to me when I'm playing my Red North keyboard and I'm playing some funky stuff, and people would come out, well, I thought you're gonna play some Oscar Peterson, and you can see the disappointment.
Right. Right.
But it's at the same time, if you just stick to one thing, like, it's important to.
See, I align you more with a Glasper, or someone that can go out and do anything with anyone at the drop of a hat, and it will still be funky and it will still swing hard.
Thank you.
And all of that, it really is, like, to me, that is the deal. And that reminds me that he just won a Grammy Award for music from the film. And I wonder about your path to doing exactly that, because I think this is really important, is making that jump and taking off this hat and putting on a different hat.
That's what I do.
Gene of the Joneses.
Yes.
A film that if you haven't seen, you should absolutely seek it out. Robi did the score for that. It was at TIFF. It's called Gene of the Joneses. An incredible story. How did that come into your lap? And tell me about taking the plunge and saying, I can do this.
Yes. Well, the way that worked is that I did, I think it was about 5-6 years ago, I was asked by a music supervisor to come in and play My Foolish Heart, a version which is very similar to Bill Evans' version, which it's very common in the music for film, where they need another artist doing something like that track. So I came in with Mike Downs and Morgan Childs, and we recreated a Bill Evans vibe on My Foolish Heart. And it was the movie Arbitrage with Richard Gere and Susan Sarandon. It's a really good movie too. And so the end credit would be us playing. So I already had this in for jazz, for movies.
Right. So you're already there.
But again, it's jazz for movies.
Yes, right.
So Gene of the Joneses is done by Stella Maggie, who's an amazing writer and director. Watch out, because she'll be like, there's just another movie that just came out called Everything, Everything.
Okay.
She's just gonna explode.
I'll take your word for it. Yeah.
And so she did Gene of the Joneses, and it has that vibe of like older Woody Allen movies, which I love as well.
Except in the with a Caribbean twist.
But you can feel that
totally.
And she has that background, that Woody Allen kind of writing, that kind of jazzy and out and like interesting.
Yeah.
And so the person who usually deals with these kind of situations when there's a director and they need a composer is the music supervisor, who will say, well, I think you should get that guy or use that song, and so I was called to go and meet and do it, and it was kind of obvious that I can do that because it has to do with jazz, although it goes into different places. And one of the first things I pointed out is that keep me in mind for other stuff
good
too.
for you.
Because that's the thing. It's but there's always a way in for different people. But sometimes you hear those soundtracks, and I was deeply disappointed when you hear the action, like the trailers.
Yeah.
I hope Ross Porter doesn't mind it. I always try to be like Ross Porter in a world.
Yes.
Jazz. So So, you know, you hear those trailers and you hear these big drums, the cinematic, the typical thing. So when you buy this software and you hit one note, it'll do all that. So it was deeply disappointing, but made me think, wait, if I can do all this, you know, I can learn that. So I'm actually learning a lot about software. That's another thing. No matter how much you love this and acoustic stuff, again, today's music industry is on a laptop. So you kind of have to get good at it.
To know it.
So that's how that came about, and it was also amazing that I had a chance. I mean, a lot of times when they call you in for movies, music is the very last thing they add. So the good part of that, the bad part is that you're gonna work like a maniac.
Yeah, because you have to finish. Yeah.
Oh, you get okay. Next week it's
done.
going into this festival. Can you just do the music? So, but you know, you have to be like, okay, I gotta clear my schedule and jump into it. But the good thing is you're able to see the characters and the rough cut, at least or the final cut. And that's amazing because I love doing that so much. When you see a character and it's like, okay. And it was amazing because like melodies just come to you and like certain things they say. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't score that way, but I just love like, you know, okay, she's walking on the street like that. Okay, let's pick up her tempo and like you do the bass and then when the door slams you slide and like we did a lot of.
That's great.
I just love doing that. I remember watching. This is totally different, but Indiana Jones. He's running away from people and they're trying to use the crossbow to shoot him. And then you hear the pizzicato strings from John Williams going, you know. It's like, I just love like, you know, trying to create something which will give you the perfect visual. Yeah. So, you know, again, I think me doing well in the jazz area will help. For people when they need the jazz kind of soundtrack. So that's how that came out.
It's incredible. It's a fantastic film if you get a chance. We have some time for, I could keep on talking and I have all these Thelonious Monk quotes that I want to ask you about. But,
I'd love to answer some questions.
But if you have questions, you were answering some questions.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
this guy.
If you have any questions
for Robi, I am happy. This is what it's all about. Yeah. Hi.
I was wondering when you were first starting out, you talked about like getting gigs at the Rex and stuff like that. When you first started out, did you have like a policy behind how you did your business? Like, would you like do a pass the hat gig and a percent of the bar, or would you go like straight for a flat rate gig, or how did you like determine when to like
change things?
Yeah.
That's a very good question. Well, when I came over, as I said, I basically had no guarantees, nothing. Just came with no English, nothing, right? So what you'll do in that case, you'll take everything what comes to your way to support your family and make a name. So that wasn't the time, of course, to negotiate. I just tell me where the gig is, what do I wear, and I'll get there with my keyboard. Do I need a keyboard? Do I need an amp? You know, but things started to change. Like I used to do the passing around the hat thing at the Reservoir Lounge. And I mean, I don't want to sound like, you know, someone who is so far away from that, because I have still my friends and my musical brothers and sisters. A lot of them are doing club gigs, and I'm doing some club gigs too still. But there's a time when you want to separate yourself from that, because it's either the people who immigrate somewhere and they used to make $20 a week or a month by doing a gig, and there's no balance of you can't really tell what's good or what's bad, and you just take everything.
Take whatever. Yeah.
Right. Or the people who really don't make the money, but they really don't need the money, and they'll just go to a random coffee shop and say, hey, can I come and play music here? I'll play for free. I'll pay my musicians. You don't have to pay me. That's the two type of attitude. I really don't want to badmouth anyone again, but those are the people who bring it down for every musician. Because because I cannot give entertainment for someone because I want to play. And if you have that big ass house and you're not making a living from music and you did so well that you got a piano at home and all that stuff, why not bring people over and feed them and play there?
Yeah.
And if you want exposure,
Yeah.
put some Zoom cameras up and put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to give it away for free, but don't make everyone else work for nothing, and then you might give them some money. And people like I was there, then you'll come and do it. And I think that's the problem. That brings it down. So either the people who desperately need the money, but I used to go wash dishes when I first came because I didn't want to go and play for free. I said, I'm going to go wash dishes and make money.
It sets a precedent.
It does.
And then they expect you to do it
Now,
all the time.
just 1 sec. And when I sold out Colonel Hall, then I can go and work at this place which holds 5 people, pay for the door. I might do it for my friend, or I still play the Rex because there's the new album coming out and we're kind of play. And you know, some clubs are more reasonable too because you actually make money. They don't take advantage from you. But you know, I'm much more picky now, and no hat gigs and anything
Yeah,
like
because
that.
if you were to go back to the Rex now, they would probably do business your way rather than their way.
Right, and you know, I mean, you know, some clubs, as I said, like the Rex, has been always cool. They, you know, it's one of the few places which has music 7 days a week and
Yeah,
a
it's
lot
a
of great
musicians
music.
club.
So it's a musicians club, and we go there to hang. And you know, like I'll make an exception in certain cases for people who I want to support, and I might just come out with my melodica, you know, that thing you blow into and play, and I might just sit in on anybody's gig. But I do think that it's very important that you make a decision at a certain point. It's a tricky thing too, because then people, oh, he's got a Juno and he played Colonel Haas, so we won't call him anymore because he won't want to do
It's
gigs.
a
And then you're
fine
sitting
line.
at home going, well, I need some gigs.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I rather do, you know, less gigs and better gigs than do what I used to do, because that's gonna kill your back, loading in and all that other stuff too, you know.
Sir.
Robbie, with all the students taking jazz today in 4 or 5 different places in Ontario, what do you see the prospects for what they'll be doing, aside from what is already occurring out there and what you do in the future?
Well, that's a very good question and a hard question to answer.
What do you think?
I think, well, sometimes I teach as well, right? And sometimes, because of so many different things happening in the music industry, we joke around that you go into your class and you say, quit, you know. But you won't say that because you know why you started, and I'm a living example of somehow making it with kids. Just doing music, which, you know, I'm telling you, at Halloween I don't even have to dress up. I just say I'm a musician with 3 kids, and they scared. They run away. It's probably the most unsafest field. I'll be honest. It's probably the most unsafest. It's the unsafest profession, probably. Like, you know, it's famous that you go to the bank and trying to get something going and say, what's your profession? It's a musician. That's funny. What's your profession? I mean, it's tricky to tell kids, yeah, you should really do this. But what I tell them is that you take your soundtrack scoring thing at Humber. The good thing, I mean, I don't know about other places, but Humber has a very, very good program for all kinds of things. You have to produce your own recordings. You have to learn about the software, and there's just a lot of different areas which I think they're essential. Again, I think the students who have the mentality of, you know, I just want to, you know, smoke weed and listen to Coltrane, go to New York and just hang. God bless you if you have the backup for that, right? But once you have more responsibilities and more weight on your shoulders, you'll have to realize you have to do a lot of things. So I think with a lot of good education, you can still manage it if you pick up on technology. back in the day when people said, I'm not getting on email, I want to see your face, I'm not going to phone you, I'm going to meet you, then you lose gigs.
Yeah.
I'm not going with email. I don't want a Facebook account. I'm with them. Like I'm getting really tired of a lot of social media stuff, I have to admit, you know. But at the same time, if you don't follow what's new, then it's, so I think a huge part of it is not just think of jazz education as playing standards and playing the blues. It's essential to learn that stuff though. But you have to be very open if you want to keep up with the business.
Absolutely.
Or just be in a great place where you don't have to make a living from music. And then you can just do it for fun.
Any more questions? Yes.
This is not personally directed, but in general, and during this session, I noticed that we never mentioned Musicians Union. Any thoughts about Musicians Union membership, any benefits that come from that?
Wow, that's a...
It's being recorded.
There's a union? No. Well, actually, I think for me it was automatic because to be a part of any major event and any major festivals or anything like that, you have to be a member, and I think it just helps musicians, the community, to be involved.
That's one of the
Because
things I loved about the CBC when I worked there is that it was very, you had to be because we were unionized. The CBC's unionized. We only hire unionized musicians, or you have to buy a union membership at the time for the gig. I don't know. You know, I think there's two ways to every story, but I think.
Yeah, well, you know, the thing is, I think it's not really so much about the union. It's the fact that the jazz part of, like, jazz gigs of the union, there's not too much going on. So, you know, if you're counting on the union to get a great pension because you did all these jazz gigs,
that's
not happening. But if you are in the union and you do recording sessions on contract and all that other stuff, I mean, I know musicians who did so much, like the studio work in the 70s and 80s even. That's before, I mean, even when I got here, there's Attila Fiers here. We used to do this, great piano player, by the way. Mm-hmm. We used to do these sessions, and you know, a lot of times, like when people used to play on like 3 recordings one day as a sideman on contracts, we kind of caught the end of it, but 70s and 80s, I mean, if people wouldn't be in the union now, they're hugely benefiting from it. So it's definitely a good thing to be a part of it, and hopefully down the road when all these things get figured out with, you know, the new rights of music business, then it'll be even more beneficial.
And there's ways of taking advantage of being a member.
Right.
If
So
you
insurance
take
and
advantage
this
of
and
the
that.
resources that they have, etc., and you
Right.
should be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions up there? Yes.
Just kind of wondering if you have one thing, because you know about diversifying and doing many things, if
Mhm.
you could do just one, if you would do that, and what it would be, or if you like that it's always different.
Well, okay, I'll be honest with you. What I think every artist want to do, in my direction at least, you know, people who play jazz music or instrumental music in general, I think our biggest wish is that we can play our own music, tour it, and make a living out of it. Which, as easy as that sounds, it's very, very challenging to get into the global field where, you know, you just do all the major places. And I think it might be harder from here, from Canada, than or, you know, other parts of the world too, than certain places. Certain places, you know, New York and LA, there's just a lot of things going out from there, like touring and booking agents and all the stuff. So it's very hot still. But I think that's everybody's wish. I think that we can just do our own thing and make a living out of it, and we can, I mean, there's nothing for a musician, nothing like it when you go out and there's a beautiful instrument on stage and a beautiful audience, and you sit down and you do a thing and you're being appreciative, and you get paid. There's just nothing like it. So in an ideal world, that's all I want to do. You know, it's tricky though, because there was a time when there was more apparent. It's harder now for sure.
Yeah, I was wondering,
Yeah.
how, related to that, how has the Juno helped you internationally? Do you get to tour that much, and do you find that it's helped your international profile?
Well, that's a very good question. I think it definitely helps raising your profile, and I think, you know, I do get some invitations to different parts of the world, and I think that counts, because some people look at it as well, and he even won that Juno, which doesn't necessarily mean, that some people, there's people who look at awards and like, he must be great because he, got that, but that's not always the case,
Some people see it as a kiss of death. It hasn't always worked out for certain artists.
Yeah, well, I think for me it's just an incredible honor, because as far as musical awards go in Canada, that's pretty much the biggest award. So I was extremely happy and just a dream come true, because from where I come from, it's a huge thing for me. But I think it does help either way, because it's in your bio and all that stuff. It doesn't pay the bills for sure. Like none of the awards do, but in the long term, I think it raises your profile. But you have to be the one making these decisions. Just like you asked about the gigs, and like I could still do, I get calls from random people time to time that I wonder if you can do this gig. We have no money, but you gotta wear a tuxedo and you bring your own keyboard, and you're like, it's crazy, you get it. And I could still, like a lot of musicians say yes to things you wouldn't believe. But see, it's about you positioning yourself too, that you have to be smart enough to say, okay, well, I did that, now I don't want to go there. I want to go there for my friend and sit in on a song and support his new record or whatever it is. But I think it helps if you also doing it smart and balance it out, and you have to present that to your, the people in Europe or wherever you want to get gigs in. But it's very tricky to get gigs globally these days, I found.
Oh, yeah. And related to that question, do you work with a manager, or do you do both? Because you talk about getting calls yourself.
Right. It's about half and half. I have a label called A440 based out of Montreal, and I have a manager working for that label, and we get things through them, and there is support coming from there. But it's half and half, because people with social media, that's the thing, people will just message you.
Yeah.
And if you keep saying, well, go to him, go to him, go to him, it sometimes doesn't come back good if you're not getting into the conversation. So again, this is why I think it's extremely important to have, as much as I said, I'm not so much into the over posting social media thing, but it's very important to have that presence, because if I put that out online that I just got a Juno, and it gets, thousands of hits and likes and comments, you could put that in your bio and no one ever will know if you don't post about it. So, how you use it is important too, I guess.
With that in mind, do you have an agreement with your manager? Sorry, the last question. Because some managers won't allow you to take your own show.
Yeah, it's a very loose thing I have with the team I have, which is part of a huge reason why I stick with them, because there's, I'm not quick to sign any contracts these days. I almost did until lawyers tore it apart and said forget about it. It's a very tricky time to sign anything, but I have an amazing team, so it's good. But globally, it's trickier, because I think position, as great Canada is, you kind of look at all the great Canadians, you could look at musicians, actors, actresses, any field, you have to have that US connection. There's no ways around that still. Social media could maybe help with that gap, that you're posting and no one really cares where you're from. Like we mentioned some videos of Joey Alexander earlier. Who cares where he's from?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So which is a great thing, I think. But because when I was a little kid, it would have been great if you press the button and everybody can hear you. That's like some crazy stuff. But you know, I think that a huge part of it, which I'm learning day by day too, is the social presence and maybe even spending money on people who can really push that for you, because it goes further.
We unfortunately have to wrap up our conversation. I didn't even get to ask you about Stevie Wonder kicking you off a piano, but that's okay. We'll have to have that conversation another time. It's a good story though.
It is.
He did kick him off a piano.
I'll tell you in 5 seconds. Stevie Wonder walked up to me at NAMM, this show. I'm trying out a great piano. I walk in, I start playing a Stevie Wonder tune. I always play Stevie Wonder tunes. I'm playing the Stevie Wonder tune and I see this entourage of people coming in, and I look down and there he is. And he's like, "Can I play the piano?" And I said, "No!"